Hey guys, and welcome back. Tonight, we journey to the world of the medieval peasant. We often picture a life of simple, hard work in harmony with the turning of the seasons. A life of community, of faith, and of a deep connection to the earth. But when the seasons turned against them, when the rains came too often, or not at all, that simple life became a desperate, daily struggle for a single mouthful of food. Tonight, you are a farmer. Your fields have failed. Your grain stores are empty, and you are about to live through one day of the great famine. So, before the hunger truly sets in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these quiet journeys into the past. As always, let me know in the comments where you are all listening from. All right, dim the lights, let the world outside fade away, and let us step back in time. And you awaken in the deep, damp, and absolute darkness that comes just before a winter dawn. There is no sound to wake you. There is no light. There is only the gnawing. It is a dull, hollow, and almost living ache in the pit of your stomach, a feeling that has become your entire world. It is the first thing that greets you when you return to consciousness, and the last thing you feel as you drift into a shallow, restless sleep. It is the great central truth of your existence. It is the hunger. You lie perfectly still on your straw pallet, which is little more than a flattened, lumpy bag of damp straw on the cold, packed earth floor of your hut. The air in a single small room is thick, cold, and heavy. It smells of the sour smoke from last night's dying fire, of the damp earth, of the 6 unwashed human bodies that share this space, and of the faint, musky animal scent of the single, gaunt cow who is your family's most precious possession, and who shares this shelter with you. You listen. The only sound is the soft, shallow, and troubled breathing of your wife and your children, asleep on their own pallets nearby. It is the sound of hungry sleep, a rest that does not restore, but only serves as a brief gray pause in a long and losing war. For a single, cruel, and fleeting moment, as your mind hovers in the space between dreaming and waking, you allow yourself to hope. You allow yourself to imagine that today will be different, that you will wake. And by some miracle, the world will have been put right, that you will go to the grain bin in the corner and find it full of clean, dry barley, that you will smell the rich, life-giving aroma of fresh bread baking on the hearth. But then, a sharp, cramping pain twists in your gut, and the foolish, waking dream is shattered. You are awake, and the world is as it was yesterday, and as it will be tomorrow. The world is empty. You open your eyes. The darkness is absolute. You are a man defined by what you do not have. You have no food. You have no hope. And in this moment, you feel you do not even have a future. You think of food. The memory is a form of exquisite, self-inflicted torture. Your mind, a traitor to your own peace, conjures the image of a piece of roasted pork, its skin crisp and salty, the fat dripping and sizzling. You can almost taste it. You remember the simple, profound pleasure of a full stomach, the feeling of a heavy, warm contentment after a harvest feast. The memory is so vivid, so real, that it makes the present hollow ache in your own belly 100 times more painful. This is the nature of the Great Famine. It is not just an emptiness of the stomach. It is an emptiness of the world. The joy has been leached from the land. The laughter has fled from the village. All that remains is this slow, quiet, and all-consuming obsession with the next mouthful, with the simple, biological, and now seemingly impossible act of finding enough food to keep your own heart beating for one more day. You look across the dark room at the small, sleeping forms of your children. You see, even in the gloom, how thin they have become, how their small faces are now pale and gaunt. Your youngest, a boy of 4, whimpers in his sleep, his small hand clutching at his own empty stomach. And in that moment, the dull, aching despair in your own heart is sharpened into a fierce, painful, and deeply motivating agony. You are a father, you are a husband, and it is your sacred and now seemingly impossible duty to feed them. You push the thin, threadbare woolen blanket aside. The cold air hits you, a familiar, unwelcome shock. You rise from your pallet, your own body a collection of aches, your joints stiff, your muscles weak from a lack of sustenance. The fire in the central hearth has burned down to a few, sullen and dying embers, their faint red glow providing the only light in the hut. You must face the day. You must begin the endless, desperate, and almost certainly fruitless search for something, for anything, that can be eaten. The day has begun not with a sense of purpose, but with a profound and all-encompassing ache. You push yourself up from the cold, damp earth of the floor, your body a collection of dull, aching protests. The fire in the center of the hut has dwindled to a small, sullen pile of glowing red embers, providing a faint, ghostly light, but no real warmth. In the deep, pre-dawn gloom, you can see the sleeping forms of your family, their faces pale and thin in the flickering light. Your wife stirs, a low moan of hunger escaping her lips, even in sleep. Your first conscious act of every morning for the past month has been the same. It is a ritual. It is a pilgrimage. It is a desperate, foolish, and absolutely necessary act of hope against hope. You move, your bare feet silent on the cold, packed earth, to the far corner of the hut. This is the larder. It is not a grand room, but a simple, dark corner where your family's meager stores of life are kept. You see a few sad, wrinkled turnips in a wicker basket. You see a single, small, and nearly empty clay pot of salted butter. And you see it, the great wooden grain bin. It is the most important object in your world. It is a simple, crude box of dark, rough-hewn oak, but it is the heart of your family. It is a symbol of your success as a farmer, as a husband, as a father. In a good year, after a good harvest, this bin is filled to the very brim with the clean, dry, golden kernels of your barley. A magnificent and beautiful mountain of life and security that will see your family through the long, dark winter. A full bin is the smell of safety. It is the sound of peace. But this has not been a good year. You stand before the bin for a long moment in the silent darkness. A small, irrational, and deeply human part of your mind whispers a stupid, childish prayer. Please, let there be something today. Let me have been wrong yesterday. Let a miracle have happened in the night. You reach out a trembling hand and you lift the heavy wooden lid. The sound of it groaning open on its leather hinges is deafeningly loud in the absolute quiet of your sleeping house. You look inside. The bin is a vast, dark, and echoing cavern of pure, unadulterated emptiness. It is not entirely empty, of course. At the very bottom, there is a thin, pale layer of barley dust. There are a few sad and useless husks. And in the corners, where the rough wooden planks meet, there are a few scattered individual grains of barley. A dozen, perhaps. Maybe 20. The sight of it, the stark, undeniable, and absolute emptiness of it, is a physical blow. It is the confirmation of your ruin. The small, foolish flicker of hope that you woke with is instantly and brutally extinguished. But the ritual is not yet complete. You do not just look. You must be certain. You get down on your hands and knees on the cold, hard floor. You reach deep into the bin. You begin to search. Your fingers, the thick, calloused, and capable fingers of a farmer who has spent a lifetime working the earth become the desperate, questing tools of a starving man. You run your fingertips across the rough, splintery wood of the bottom of the bin, a blind man reading a terrible, final text. You are not just looking, you are feeling. You are searching for the small, hard, and life-giving shape of a single, overlooked kernel. You probe the corners. You scrape your fingernails along the seams where the planks are joined, digging out the fine, pale dust. You are like a desperate gold miner, sifting through a mountain of worthless rock for a single, tiny, and precious fleck of color. After several minutes of this meticulous, humiliating, and utterly desperate work, your harvest is complete. You sit back on your heels, and you open your hand. In the center of your palm, in the faint red glow of the dying embers, is the result of your morning's labor. It is a small, pathetic, and deeply insulting pile. There are perhaps 30 grains of barley, mixed with a fine, gray dust, and a few tiny splinters of wood. It is not enough to make a single mouthful of bread. It is not enough to feed a small bird. It is the ghost of a meal. It is the dust of your former life. You stare at this small, pathetic pile, and a memory so sharp and so painful it is a physical agony rises in your mind. You remember this same bin just 1 year ago after a good harvest. You remember it filled to the very top, a beautiful, golden, overflowing mountain of grain. You remember the rich, nutty smell of it. You remember the feeling of plunging your own arms up to the elbows into the cool, dry, and abundant river of your own wealth. The memory is a cruel and beautiful ghost that has come to mock you in your poverty. You close your hand into a fist, crushing the few, useless grains. You are the man of this house. It is your sacred and fundamental duty to fill this bin, and it is empty. The empty bin is a silent, wooden testament to your failure as a man. You hear a soft rustling sound behind you. It is your wife. She's awake now. She's sitting up on her pallet, watching you. She does not speak. She does not need to. She has seen you perform this same hopeless ritual every single morning for the past month. Her eyes, in the dim light, are full of a deep, quiet, and shared despair. You open your hand and you let the few dusty grains fall from your fingers back into the empty, echoing darkness of the bin. You close the heavy lid. The sound of final, dull, and funereal thud. The ritual is over. The hope is dead. There is no food in this house. Now, the true and even more desperate search must begin in the barren, frozen world outside. The finality of the empty grain bin hangs in the cold, smoky air of the hut, a silent wooden tombstone marking the death of your family's security. Your wife, who has been watching you from her pallet, now rises. She does not weep. She does not complain. The time for such luxuries is long past. There is only the grim, relentless, and practical reality of the morning, and the small, hungry mouths that must be fed. Her movements are slow with a wariness that has settled deep into her bones, but they are filled with an unbreakable, maternal purpose. Her first task is to resurrect the fire. She kneels at the central hearth, a shallow pit of cold gray ash. With a gentle, practiced hand, she coaxes the last few tiny red embers from the night back to life. She feeds them a small, precious handful of dry tinder, blowing on them with a soft, steady breath, her own life force, a gift to the nascent flames. When a small, hesitant flame finally appears, she feeds it a few precious, damp sticks of firewood and a handful of the dried animal dung that is your primary fuel. The fire is a weak, smoky, and pathetic thing, but it is a fire. It is life. She then takes the single, heavy, soot-blackened iron pot that is the heart of her kitchen, and she places it on a trivet over the new flames. She fills it with water from the great clay jug, the same cloudy, cold water you know is teeming with its own invisible dangers. But the danger of sickness tomorrow is a distant fear compared to the immediate, screaming reality of starvation today. This is the beginning of the great daily illusion. It is the ritual that holds your family together. It is the preparation of breakfast. You watch her as she moves to the small, dark corner that is your larder. She looks at the sad, wrinkled turnips in the basket. She selects the smallest one, a pathetic, woody thing, no bigger than her fist. With a small, sharp knife, she carefully, meticulously peels it. And then, in an act of the most profound and heartbreaking frugality, she places the main fleshy body of the turnip back into the basket. That must be saved. For what? You do not know. For a day when the hunger is even worse, perhaps. She takes only the thin, translucent, and almost worthless peels, and she drops them into the pot of boiling water. She adds a large, generous pinch of salt from a small clay pot. The salt is a luxury, a valuable commodity, and to use it in this watery ghost of a meal is an act of almost defiant extravagance. It is a declaration that you are not yet animals, that you will still season your water as if it were a fine stew. She might add a single wilted, yellowed cabbage leaf if one remains. And that is all. That is the recipe. She stirs the pot with a wooden spoon, her face a mask of calm. An eternal focus. She is not just boiling water and garbage. She is performing the ancient and sacred ritual of a mother, feeding her family. She is creating a meal out of nothing but water, discipline, and a fierce, unyielding love. Your children are awake now, drawn from their sleep by the familiar sounds of the morning ritual. They huddle by the fire, their thin, ragged tunics pulled tight around their small, frail bodies. Their faces are pale, their eyes large and dark in their small, gaunt faces. They do not speak. They simply watch the pot, their gaze one of pure, silent, and desperate hope. When the soup is ready, your wife ladles the hot, steaming, and almost completely non-nutritious liquid into your wooden bowls. You hold your bowl in your hands. You look down at it. It is a thin, grayish, and almost clear liquid, with a few sad, translucent ribbons of turnip peel floating in it like ghosts. It smells of little more than hot water and salt. And yet, the sensation of the hot bowl in your cold, numb hands is a profound comfort. You lift it to your lips. The liquid is hot, and the warmth of it, as it spreads through your empty, cramping stomach, is a blessed if fleeting relief. It is a deceptive warmth, a trick you are playing on your own body, a temporary silencing of the gnawing pain of your hunger. The taste is of little more than salt, with a faint, ghostly, and slightly earthy hint of the turnip. You watch your family. Your children drink their soup quickly, gratefully, their small faces lit with the simple animal pleasure of a hot liquid in a cold world. Your wife eats hers slowly, her own portion the smallest, her eyes never leaving the faces of her children. You are all participants in this shared, unspoken, and absolutely necessary illusion. You are not eating a meal. You are performing the idea of a meal. You are going through the motions of a normal life, a life where a family gathers in the morning to break their fast, because to stop performing this ritual would be to admit that you are no longer a family, but a small, isolated band of starving animals waiting to die. The bowls are empty. The breakfast is over. The fire has consumed a portion of your precious fuel. You have consumed a portion of your precious time. The deceptive warmth in your stomach is already beginning to fade, and the familiar, cold, and honest ache of true hunger is beginning its slow, inevitable return. The morning ritual is complete. You have successfully pretended to eat. Now, you must go out into the dead, rotting, and empty world and try against all hope to find something real. The pathetic morning ritual is complete. The bowls of hot, salty water have been consumed, and a brief, deceptive warmth has settled in the pit of your stomach. It is a fragile truce in the long war against your own body's hunger, a peace that you know will be broken in less than an hour. But it is enough. It is the meager fuel you need to begin the true, desperate, and all-consuming labor of your day, the search for food. You rise from the floor of the hut, your body a collection of stiff, aching joints. You take your simple woolen cloak, a thin and ragged shield against the cold, and you step out of the low, dark doorway of your home and into the world. The morning greets you not with the clean, bright promise of a new day, but with a familiar, damp, and soul-crushing gloom. The sky is a vast, featureless, and oppressive ceiling of uniform gray. A cold, fine mist hangs in the air, a breath of pure, liquid misery that clings to your face and soaks into the rough fabric of your clothes. The world smells of wet, rotting earth and of the sour, decaying scent of a harvest that has failed. You walk through your small, silent village. In a normal year, at this hour, the village would be a place of bustling, purposeful activity. You would hear the cheerful sound of an axe splitting firewood, the shouts of men leading their oxen to the fields, the laughter of children. But today, the village is a ghost of itself. It is wrapped in profound and unnatural quiet. There is no smoke rising from most of the chimneys, for there is no food to cook and no fuel to spare. The doors of the other huts are closed, as if the families within are trying to hide from the bleak reality of the new day. You see a few of your neighbors, other men, embarking on the same desperate daily quest as you. Their faces are gaunt, their eyes hollow, their shoulders slumped in a shared and unspoken despair. You do not greet each other. You do not offer a word of comfort or of hope. There are no words left for this. To speak would be to give voice to the great collective terror that has settled upon you all. And so you pass each other in a silence that is deeper and more isolating than the morning mist itself. Your path takes you past your own family's small strip of land, the few acres of earth that you are bound to by the laws of God and of your Lord. This is your land. It is the source of your identity, the purpose of your labor, the inheritance you were meant to pass on to your own sons. And it is a graveyard. You stand at its edge, and you look out upon the scene of your own utter and comprehensive failure. The field is not just barren. It is a scene of profound agricultural devastation. The rich, dark earth, which in a good year would be a source of life, is now a great churning and lifeless expanse of cold, black mud, a quagmire created by the endless, merciless rains of the past summer. The stalks of your barley, which should be standing tall and golden, heavy with grain, are a black, stunted, and rotting mess, beaten down into the mud, their heads empty and blighted. The smell that rises from the field is not the clean, honest smell of the earth. It is the sour, fetid stench of decay. It is the smell of a promise that has been broken. And as you stand there, staring at this landscape of your own personal ruin, your mind is haunted by a ghost. It is the ghost of this same field in a different time, in a good year. The memory rises, unbidden and unwelcome, a form of exquisite psychological torture. You can remember standing in this very spot, the warm, benevolent sun on your back, the air alive with the buzz of insects. You can remember the sight of the field then, a beautiful, waving, golden sea of healthy grain. You can remember the rustling sound of the wind in the ripe barley, a sound that was a promise, a guarantee of a full grain bin, of a warm winter, of a life that was safe and secure. The memory is so vivid, so real, that for a moment you can almost feel that phantom sun on your shoulders. And then a cold, damp gust of wind cuts through your thin cloak, and the beautiful, golden ghost vanishes, leaving you alone once more with the cold, wet, and black reality of your failure. You are a farmer. Your entire life, your entire sense of self, is built upon your relationship with this small patch of earth. You know its every contour, every stone, every shift in the soil. You have worked it. You have sweated into it. You have bled into it. And now it has betrayed you. Or a small, terrible voice whispers in the back of your mind, you have failed it. You cannot linger here. There is nothing for you in this graveyard of your own hopes. The orderly, predictable world of agriculture is dead. Your life as a farmer is over, at least for this year. You must now become something else. You must become a more ancient and more primitive kind of man. You turn your back on the ruined fields, the symbols of your life's work and of your great failure, and you look towards the dark, looming and almost menacing line of the great forest that marks the edge of the valley. The forest, a different world, with different rules, with different and far more dangerous gods. A place of wild things, of secrets, of a hope that is as savage and as unpredictable as the forest itself. Your day's desperate search has truly begun. You are no longer a farmer, a man of the ordered field. You are a forager, a hunter-gatherer, a desperate man who has been sent back by the cruelty of the heavens to the most ancient and most fundamental of all human struggles. You turn your back on the black, rotting ghost of your own field. There is nothing for you there but the bitter taste of failure and the memory of a better life. You pull your thin, ragged cloak tighter around your shoulders against the damp, biting wind, and you begin the long, slow walk towards the dark, brooding line of the forest that marks the edge of your world. The world of the farmer, the world of the straight furrow and the predictable season, has failed you. You must now place your hope, what little of it you have left, in the older, wilder, and more dangerous world of the hunter and the forager. You reach the edge of the woods. To step from your open, failed fields into the forest is to step from one world into another. The sky, which was a vast, open, and oppressive sheet of gray, is suddenly gone, replaced by a thick, tangled, and claustrophobic canopy of bare, black, and interlocking branches. The light dies. The air changes. It is colder here, in the perpetual twilight of the deep woods, and it is thick with the smells of a world that is not your own. It smells of damp. Black earth, of the deep, sweet, and powerful scent of a billion rotting leaves, of wet moss, and of a deep, ancient, and undisturbed cold. The sounds change, too. The open, honest howl of the wind is gone, replaced by 100 small, secret, and unsettling noises. You hear the slow, rhythmic drip, drip of water from the high, unseen branches. You hear the sudden, startling snap of a twig under your own clumsy farmer's feet. And you hear the constant, rustling, whispering sound of 1,000 unseen, unknown creatures in the deep, wet undergrowth. You are a man of the open field. You are out of your element here. Your knowledge is of the sun, of the soil, of the predictable life of grain. The forest is a place of shadows, of secrets, of a different and more dangerous kind of life. But your hunger is a guide that is more powerful than your fear. The desperate search begins. Your mind is a catalog of the half-forgotten peasant knowledge that has been passed down from your grandfather's time. The knowledge of the hungry seasons. The lessons on what to eat when the harvest fails. When the world of men has betrayed you and you must turn to the older, wilder larder of the forest itself. Your eyes, which are trained to spot the subtle signs of blight on a stalk of wheat, are now scanning the forest floor. A desperate, roving search for a familiar leaf, for a recognizable shape. You are looking for anything that is not wood or mud or stone. You see a patch of broad, green leaves that you recognize. Burdock. You fall to your knees, and you begin to dig at the cold, hard, and root-choked earth with your bare, calloused hands. The work is a slow, painful, and agonizing process. The ground is a tangled, living web of 1,000 other useless roots. Your fingers, already numb with the cold, are scraped raw by the sharp edges of hidden stones. After 10 minutes of this frantic, desperate excavation, you manage to pull the root from the earth. It is a disappointing, thin, and woody thing, but it is a root. It is food. You knock the dirt from it and place it in the small leather pouch at your belt. You continue your search. You are no longer a man. You are an animal, a rooting pig, your head bowed, your eyes fixed on the ground. You move slowly through the undergrowth, your thin cloak snagging on the thorny branches of the brambles. You know that you are not the only one. This is not a pristine, untouched wilderness. This is the larder of a starving village. You see the signs of your neighbor's own desperate searches everywhere you look. You see the freshly turned earth where someone else has already dug for roots. You see the stripped branches of the few sad and frostbitten hawthorn bushes. Their bitter red berries already taken. You are not just in a battle with the forest. You are in a silent, desperate, and deeply sad competition with your own starving neighbors for the last few meager scraps that this barren, winter-ready world has to offer. You look up into the high branches of a great oak tree, searching for acorns. The branches are bare. The squirrels and the other, more desperate human foragers have taken them all. You spend half an hour scouring the ground beneath the tree, and your reward is a handful of the small, green, and bitter acorns that had fallen before they were ripe. You know that they must be boiled for hours in several changes of water to leach the bitter, poisonous tannin from them before they can be eaten. But they are something. You put them in your pouch. You see a cluster of pale mushrooms growing on the side of a great, rotting, fallen log. A surge of pure animal hope rushes through you, but it is immediately followed by a wave of cold, intelligent fear. You are a farmer. You do not know the secret, subtle language of the fungi. You know that some mushrooms will give you a hot, life-saving meal, and that others, which look almost identical, will give you a night of agonizing cramps, of vomiting, and of a certain painful death. You look at the pale, innocent-looking mushrooms, and you see not a promise of food, but a question you cannot afford to answer incorrectly. You leave them. Hours pass. The weak gray light that filters through the high branches begins to fade. The sun, you know, is now past its zenith. You have been at this work, this desperate, backbreaking, and almost fruitless work, for the better part of a day. You stop and you take stock of your harvest. You empty the contents of your small leather pouch into your hand. It is a pathetic, almost insulting collection. There are 2 thin and woody burdock roots caked in a cold black mud. There is a handful of the small, green, bitter acorns, and there is a single, wizened, and half-rotten wild apple you found in a forgotten corner of the woods. This is the fruit of your entire day's labor. It is a meal that will not fill the belly, but will only serve to mock it. It is not enough. It is not even close to being enough. You stand in the deep, cold, and now darkening silence of the forest. The desperate search has begun, and it has already failed. You stand in a small, damp clearing in the heart of the forest, the pathetic results of your morning's labor resting in your open, calloused palm. A handful of bitter acorns, 2 thin, woody roots, still caked in the cold, black mud from which you dug them. It is a meal for a starving squirrel, not for a family of 4. It is a mockery, a profound and bitter wave of despair, so powerful it makes you feel dizzy, washes over you. This is not enough, but you are a farmer. Your entire life has been a battle against the whims of the earth, a long and often losing war against blight, against drought, against the endless, patient hunger of the weeds. You are a creature of stubborn and desperate hope. You cannot give up, not yet. Your mistake, you tell yourself, was in staying too close to the village. The forest there has been picked clean by 100 other starving men, its meager offerings already stripped bare. You must go deeper. You must walk further, into the older, wilder, and more untouched heart of the woods, where the easy pickings are gone, but where a more determined forager might yet find a hidden bounty. You make your decision. You turn your back on the path that leads home, and you push your way deeper into the tangled, untamed undergrowth. The forest changes as you travel. The younger, thinner trees of the outer woods give way to a silent, ancient army of great oaks and beeches. Their massive, bare branches are a tangled black web against the gray sky, a thick canopy that swallows what little light there is. The world descends into a deep, perpetual twilight. The air grows colder and the silence more profound. The small, familiar rustlings of the undergrowth are gone, replaced by a deep, listening quiet, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. You feel a familiar, prickling, superstitious fear, the fear your priest has so carefully cultivated in you. This is the world of the old gods, of the wolf, of the wild boar, of things that do not have names. But your hunger is a thing that is more powerful than your fear. You press on, your eyes scanning the ground, searching, always searching. And as you search, a new and even more terrible understanding begins to dawn in your farmer's mind. The forest itself is starving. The wet, cold, and sunless summer that drowned your crops and rotted the grain in your own fields was not a localized disaster. It was a sickness that afflicted the entire land, and the signs of it are everywhere. You find a great stand of hazel trees, and a flicker of hope ignites in your chest. But when you look closer, the nuts that still cling to the branches are small, shriveled, and covered in a fine black powdery blight. You crack one open, and the meat inside is a dark, rotten paste. You find a patch of wild berry canes, their thorny branches a thick and promising tangle. But there are no berries. The fruit, you can see, had formed, but without the sun to ripen it, it has simply withered and rotted on the vine, leaving behind only small, black, and mummified husks. Even the animal signs, the signs of life, are gone. You see no fresh tracks of deer in the damp earth. You see no half-eaten nuts, the telltale sign of a squirrel's work. The forest is eerily, unnaturally quiet. There are no birds singing in the high branches. The animals, with their older and deeper wisdom, have understood the coming famine, and they have either starved or have moved on to better, more prosperous lands. You are walking through a dying world. The great, wild larder of the forest, the last desperate hope of your people, is as empty and as barren as your own grain bin. In a fit of pure, desperate frustration, you begin to dig at the earth with your bare hands, tearing at the thick, wet carpet of rotting leaves, your movements frantic and animalistic. You are not looking for anything in particular. You are simply digging, a madman searching for a treasure that does not exist. Your fingers, already raw, are torn by a sharp stone, and you look at the thin, dark line of your own blood welling up. A small and insignificant wound in a world of profound and all-encompassing hunger. You collapse back onto a great moss-covered log, your body trembling with a mixture of exhaustion, of frustration, and of a new and absolute despair. You have gambled the last of your day's strength on this journey into the deep woods, and you have lost. There is nothing here. There is nothing left. The quiet despair in your heart begins to curdle into a hot, black, and impotent rage. It is an anger at everything. An anger at the sky for its endless, merciless rain. An anger at the earth for its stubborn, fruitful refusal. An anger at the saints to whom you have prayed every single night and who are either deaf or do not care. And a deep, burning, and deeply dangerous anger at the Lord, your Master, who you know is at this very moment sitting in his great, drafty castle, but who is sitting before a roaring fire, his belly full of the roasted meat and the good, clean bread that your own labor has provided him. The rage is a brief, welcome fire in your cold, empty soul, but it is a useless fire. It cannot fill your stomach. It cannot feed your children. It burns itself out, leaving you colder and more empty than before. The light in the forest is already beginning to fail. The long, gray afternoon is drawing to a close. You are miles from your hut. Your small pouch is still filled with the same pathetic collection of a few bitter acorns and 2 muddy roots. The great, desperate search has been a great and absolute failure. You sit for a long moment on the cold, mossy log, in the deep, silent, and now almost completely dark heart of the barren forest. You have come here seeking life, and you have found only a deeper, more profound, and more final kind of emptiness. With a groan that seems to come from the very center of your being, you push yourself to your feet, and you begin the long, slow, and utterly defeated journey home. You sit on the cold, moss-covered log in the deep, silent, and barren heart of the forest. The weak, gray light of the late afternoon is already beginning to fade. A profound and absolute despair, a coldness that is even deeper than the chill in your bones, settles over you. The forest, your last desperate hope, is as empty and as dead as your own fields. You have failed. There is nothing here. You push your aching body to its feet. It is time to begin the long, slow, and utterly defeated journey home. You must now return to your hut, to your wife and your hungry children, with nothing to show for a full day of back-breaking, fruitless labor, but a handful of bitter acorns and a few muddy, almost inedible roots. It is a walk of pure, unadulterated shame. You begin to trudge through the thick, wet carpet of rotting leaves, your movements heavy and listless. Your mind is a hollow, empty void. The anger is gone. The hope is gone. All that remains is the dull, familiar, and gnawing ache of the hunger in your own belly. And then you freeze. A sound. It is a small sound, a soft, rustling noise in the thick undergrowth just ahead of you on the path. You stand perfectly, absolutely still, every sense in your weary body suddenly and sharply, on high alert, and then it emerges. It hops out onto the narrow, muddy path, not 20 paces from where you stand. It is a rabbit, a wild rabbit, its fur a thick, healthy, brownish gray, its nose a constant, twitching, curious motion. It is not a great, magnificent stag, not the prize of a nobleman's hunt. It is a small, common, and humble creature, and it is the most beautiful and the most terrifying thing you have ever seen in your life. Your first, primal and all-consuming reaction is a wave of pure animal hunger, so powerful it is a physical sensation. Your mouth, which has been dry and foul-tasting all day, suddenly floods with saliva. The gnawing ache in your stomach transforms into a sharp, painful, and demanding cramp. You do not see a small animal. You see a meal. You see a pot of rich, hot, and life-giving stew. You see the look on your children's faces when you bring home meat. You see survival. But this pure, honest, and desperate hunger is immediately followed by a second and even more powerful emotion. A wave of pure, cold, and deeply ingrained fear. You are a peasant. You are a serf, and you are standing in your lord's forest. You know the law. Every man, woman, and child in your village knows the law, for it is a law that is written not on parchment, but in the brutal, unforgettable stories of your own people. The forest, and every single living creature within it, from the greatest wild boar to the smallest songbird, does not belong to you. It does not belong to the people. It belongs to the lord of the manor. It is his personal larder, his private hunting ground, his noble privilege to take anything from it. To kill even this small, insignificant rabbit is not a simple act of foraging. It is a crime. It is the crime of poaching. And in your world, there are few crimes, short of murder or treason, that are punished with such a swift, brutal, and unforgetting severity. You have seen the proof of this law. You have seen the man from the next village, a man who was caught with a deer, hanging from the great oak tree at the crossroads, his body left there for weeks as a silent, rotting warning to all who would dare to defy the Lord's will. You know the story of your own uncle, who as a young boy was caught setting a snare for a bird, and who had the first 2 fingers of his right hand cut off by the Lord's forester, a poignant, crippling mark of his crime that he carried with him to his grave. You stand frozen on the path, a man caught in the grip of 2 of the most powerful and most primal forces known to man: the desperate, immediate hunger of a starving father, and the deep, abiding terror of a powerless peasant before the unyielding law of his master. You look at the rabbit. It is still there, nibbling at a small green shoot, utterly oblivious to the great existential debate that is raging in your own soul. You could let it go. You could turn and walk away, and you would be safe. You would return to your hut, and your family would eat their bitter, watery soup, and they would go to sleep with the familiar, honest pain of an empty stomach. Or you could risk it. You could risk everything. You could risk the Lord's justice. You could risk the forester's axe. You could risk the hangman's noose, all for this one small and desperately needed meal. The face of your youngest son, his own face pale and gaunt, his eyes large and dark with hunger, flashes in your mind, and the choice is made. You do not have a bow. You do not have a spear. You are not a hunter. You are a farmer. Your only weapon is your own desperate peasant cunning. You stoop, your movements as slow and as silent as you can possibly manage, and you pick up a heavy, fist-sized stone from the path. You creep forward, one step, then another. The ragged's head jerks up, its ears swiveling, sensing a danger. You throw. It is a clumsy, desperate, and lucky throw. The stone flies through the air and strikes the rabbit on the side of the head with a sickening, soft thud. The creature lets out a single, high-pitched and almost human-sounding squeal of pain and terror. It does not die. It thrashes, its powerful back legs kicking, trying to drag its stunned body back into the undergrowth. You do not hesitate. You leap forward, a predator yourself now, and you pounce on the small, struggling, and warm body. The act is a brutal and deeply personal one. You end its life with your own bare, calloused hands. For a moment, as you kneel in the mud, The small, limp, and still warm body of the rabbit in your hands, you feel a surge of pure, triumphant, and almost godlike power. You are a hunter. You have provided. But the triumph is instantly extinguished, replaced by a wave of pure, cold, and paranoid fear. You have just committed a terrible crime. You are a poacher. You are a thief. Every rustle of a leaf, every snap of a twig, now sounds like the heavy, purposeful footsteps of the Lord's forester coming to deliver his brutal justice. With frantic, trembling hands, you open your small leather pouch. You push the few, pathetic roots and acorns to the side, and you hide the small, warm, and bloody body of the rabbit at the bottom, a terrible and wonderful secret. The journey home is a new kind of torment. You are no longer just a weary and defeated forager. You are now a fugitive. You are a criminal, carrying the evidence of your great transgression. You do not take the main path. You skulk through the deepest, darkest shadows of the forest, your heart pounding with every sound, every imagined footstep. You have found meat. You have found a real meal for your family, but you know that you have paid a terrible and unseen price. You have traded your safety, your peace of mind, and your honest peasant soul, all for the taste of a single, small, and forbidden piece of meat. The journey home is a new and special kind of torment. You are no longer just a weary and defeated forager, a man whose only enemy is the emptiness of the world. You are now a criminal, a fugitive. The small, warm, and heavy weight of the dead rabbit in your leather pouch is a constant, terrifying reminder of your great transgression. It is a secret that feels both like a magnificent, life-giving treasure and a hot, burning coal that you fear will sear its way through the leather and brand you as a poacher for all the world to see. You do not walk the main path. You skulk through the deepest, darkest parts of the forest, moving like a phantom from one great black tree trunk to the next. Every sound is now a threat. The snap of a twig under your own foot makes your heart leap into your throat. The rustle of a mouse in the dead leaves sounds, for a terrifying second, like the heavy, purposeful footsteps of the Lord's forester, the man whose job it is to dispense the brutal justice of the woods. You are a creature of paranoia now, your senses sharpened to a razor's edge by a pure and potent fear. You finally emerge from the tree line as the last of the day's gray, watery light is failing. The familiar, humble shape of your small village is a welcome, if miserable, sight. But you do not walk proudly through its center. You skirt the edges, keeping to the shadows of the huts, your head down, avoiding the gaze of the few other souls who are still out in the cold. You cannot share your good fortune. To reveal your prize would be to share your crime. And in this desperate, hungry world, you know there are men who would happily trade your secret to the reeve for an extra ration of bread. The act of providing for your own family has forced you into a new and deeper state of isolation from your community. You reach the low, crude door of your own hut. You pause for a moment, your hand on the latch, and you compose yourself. You are no longer the terrified fugitive of the forest. You are now the father, the provider, returning to his home. You take a deep breath and you enter. The scene inside is one of quiet, familiar misery. Your wife is sitting by the small, smoky fire, mending a tear in your son's thin tunic. Your children are huddled together on their straw pallet for warmth, their faces pale and listless in the firelight. The air is thick with the familiar smell of damp, of wood smoke, and of despair. They all look up as you enter, their eyes full of the same weary and unspoken question they ask you every evening. Did you find anything? You do not speak. You walk to the small, rough wooden table in the center of the room. First, you reach into your pouch and you pull out the pathetic results of your official foraging. You place the 2 thin, muddy burdock roots and the handful of bitter acorns on the table. You see the familiar, tired look of disappointment on your wife's face. It is the same meager harvest as yesterday. But then you reach deeper into your pouch. Your movements are slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, and you pull out the rabbit. You lay it on the table. It is a small, limp, and bloody thing, its fur matted. But it is meat. It is life. For a long, silent moment, your family simply stares. They stare at the rabbit as if it were a creature from a myth, a magical being that has just appeared in their lives. The concept of meat, the taste of it, the feel of it, has become a thing of the distant, half-forgotten past. And then, the silence is breaking. Your youngest son lets out a sound that you have not heard in months. It is a gasp of pure, unadulterated, and almost painful delight. Your daughter's great, dark, hungry eyes grow even wider, and they are shining with a light you thought had been extinguished forever. And your wife lets out a single choked sob, but it is not the sound of grief. It is the sound of a hope so profound and so unexpected that it is a physical, overwhelming force. And in that one perfect and beautiful moment, all the terror of the forest, all the guilt of your crime, all the fear of the Lord's justice, it is all washed away. You are not a criminal. You are not a failure. You are a hero. You are the father who has walked into the dark, barren woods and has returned with a miracle. It is the proudest and most powerful moment of your life since the Great Famine began. The moment of reverent awe is quickly replaced by a frantic, purposeful activity. Your wife takes the rabbit. She is a farmer's wife and she is a practical woman. With her own small sharp knife, she begins the grim but necessary work of skinning and butchering the small animal on the floor by the hearth. Nothing will be wasted. The skin will be saved, to be cured and used to mend a shoe. The entrails will be added to the pot to thicken the stew. She adds the small precious chunks of meat to the iron pot, along with the bitter roots and the acorns you have gathered. She adds water, and soon a new and almost forgotten smell begins to fill the small hut. It is the rich, warm, savory, and life-giving smell of cooking meat. It is the smell of a feast. When the stew is ready, the division of the meal is a solemn and serious ritual. The largest, most tender pieces of the rabbit are ladled into the small wooden bowls of your children. You and your wife take what is left, the tougher, stringier pieces and the broth. You eat. The meat is a revelation. It is a taste of a different life, of a different world. It is rich, it is real, it is sustenance. But as you chew the last of your own small, precious portion, the grim, cold reality of your situation begins to creep back in. The rabbit was a small one. The meat, when divided between 4 hungry people, amounts to only a few precious and fleeting mouthfuls. It was a single, wonderful meal. It is not a solution. It has not saved you. It has only postponed the inevitable, desperate hunger for one more day. Later that night, you lie on your pallet. The small, picked clean bones of the rabbit are now in the refuse pile. Your family is asleep, their bellies full for the first time in a month. Their sleep a deeper and more peaceful thing than you have seen in a long time. You sit and you listen to the quiet, contented sound of their breathing. The brief, triumphant feeling of being the hero has faded, and in its place is the returning, familiar cold of your reality, now compounded by a new and even more terrible fear. You have fed your family, yes, but the price was a crime that could see you blinded or maimed or hanged. And you know, with a deep and aching certainty, that tomorrow the hunger will return, as relentless and as unforgiving as the tide. And you will have to face the same terrible choices all over again. The night passes in a state of strange, conflicting emotions. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, Your children sleep a deep, peaceful, and unbroken sleep, their small bellies full of the rich, life-giving meat of the rabbit. Your wife, too, finds a few hours of true rest, her face, even in sleep, seeming to have lost some of its deep, etched lines of anxiety. You, however, do not sleep. You lie awake, your own stomach full, but your mind a frantic, paranoid torment. Every scrape of a branch against the roof, every howl of the wind, sounds like the footsteps of the Lord's forester, coming to exact his terrible justice. The meal that brought your family a moment of peace has brought you a new and even more potent kind of fear. The morning arrives, gray and cold as always. The first and most urgent task is to dispose of the evidence of your crime. Your wife, with a silent, shared understanding, takes the small, picked clean bones and the carefully folded skin of the rabbit and buries them deep within the foul, steaming refuse pile at the back of your hut, a place of rot and filth where no one would ever think to look. The miracle of last night's meal is now a secret, buried in the mud. You eat your morning meal. It is a return to the familiar, miserable reality. A few saved morsels of the leftover stew, now cold and congealed, and a piece of the hard, dark bread. It is a poor and meager breakfast, but the memory of the meat, the ghost of its flavor, gives you a small, false sense of strength. Today, you tell yourself, you will be strong. Today, you will find something else. You are preparing to leave for the forest again, to begin another day's long and desperate search, when you hear a sound from the hut next to yours. It is not the familiar sound of your neighbor William, a man you have known your entire life, preparing for his own day of labor. It is a different sound. It is the sound of a woman weeping. It is not a loud theatrical wail. It is a low, quiet, and utterly hopeless sound. A thin, keening ribbon of pure, animal grief that cuts through the cold morning air. It is the sound of a heart that has been completely and irrevocably broken. You hesitate. In this new and terrible world of the famine, the unwritten rule is to keep to yourself. Every family is an island. Every man is locked in his own private struggle for survival. To interfere in the affairs of your neighbors is to invite trouble, to expose yourself to their own bad luck. But this is William. You have known him since you were boys, and the sound of his wife's grief is a thing that cannot be ignored. You walk the few paces to the low, open doorway of his hut. You peer into the smoky gloom within, and you see a scene of such profound, quiet, and absolute despair that it stops your own heart. William is sitting on a low stool by the cold, dead hearth. He is not moving. He is staring, his gaze fixed and empty at the wall. His face, which you have always known as a broad, cheerful, and simple face, is now a hollowed-out, gray mask of pure, catatonic despair. He is a man who has been pushed beyond the point of grief and into the great empty silence that lies on the other side. And on the floor, on the straw pallet where the family sleeps, is his wife. She is kneeling, her body hunched over, and she is holding their youngest child, a boy of 3, in her arms. The child is wrapped in their only good woolen blanket, and he is perfectly unnaturally still. You understand in an instant. The child is dead. You look at the small, still form, and you can see the terrible, quiet truth of the famine. You can see the boy's skin, pale and stretched tight, almost translucent, over the delicate, bird-like bones of his face. You can see his small, swollen belly, a grotesque and cruel mockery of fullness. You have seen this before, on the starving dogs that roam the village. It is the mark of a body that has been so deprived of sustenance that it has begun to consume itself. He has not died of a sickness. He has not died of an accident. He has died of a simple, quiet, an absolute lack of food. He has starved to death in the night, just a few feet away from you, through a thin wall of wattle and daub. A wave of pure, cold, and sickening guilt washes over you. Last night, your own children ate meat. Last night, you and your wife sat by the fire and felt a rare and precious moment of warmth and fullness. Last night, you were a hero, a triumphant provider. And while you were savoring your small stolen victory, your neighbor's child was quietly, silently, and agonizingly wasting away. The small, insignificant rabbit you killed in the forest now feels like a thing of immense and terrible weight. It was a life, a meal, a single thing. Extra day of survival. And it was a day that was granted to your family and not to his. You want to say something. You want to offer a word of comfort, of sympathy, but the words die in your throat. What can you possibly say to a man whose child has just starved to death? What comfort can you, a man whose own children are, for now, still alive, possibly offer? Your presence here is not a comfort. It is an insult. It is a testament to your own dumb and brutal luck. You look at the small, still body of the dead child, and you see the future. You see the face of your own son, of your own daughter. You see the path that you are all walking on. The abstract, almost impersonal idea of the famine has now become a concrete, personal, and deeply, deeply terrifying reality. It is no longer just about the ache in your stomach. It is about the cold, still, and impossibly light weight of a child's body in its mother's arms. You are struck, too, by the terrible silence of it all. In a good year, the death of a child would be a great communal tragedy. The village would gather. The women would bring food. The men would help to dig the small grave. The entire community would share the burden of the grief. But the famine has killed that, too. It has killed the community. You have nothing to offer this family. You have no extra food to share. You have no words of comfort that are not a hollow, mocking lie. The famine has atomized your world. Every family is now an island, a desperate and lonely fortress, and your only duty is to guard your own walls. You stand there for a moment longer, a helpless and horrified witness to this quiet, private apocalypse. And then you slowly, silently, back away from the doorway. You leave them to their grief. You leave them alone in their house of the dead. The small, triumphant feeling you had last night is now a bitter, poisonous ash in your mouth. You have been given a stark, brutal, and unforgettable lesson in the true and democratic nature of the famine. It is a slow, quiet, and relentless beast that is stalking your entire village, and it is simply, methodically, picking off the weakest and the unluckiest first. You turn away from the silent, terrible tableau of your neighbor's hut. Your heart, a cold, heavy stone in your chest. The image of the small, still body of the dead child is now a permanent and horrifying resident of your mind. It is a ghost that will walk with you for the rest of your days. The profound, quiet grief of the scene is a stark and terrible contrast to the screaming, desperate demands of your own family's hunger. You must go. You must leave this house of the dead and go in search of life, however meager. Your own children are watching you from the doorway of your hut, their faces pale and thin, their eyes wide with a quiet, animal understanding of the tragedy that has just befallen their playmate. You do not look at them. To look at them now, with the image of your neighbor's dead son so fresh in your mind, is a pain you cannot bear. You pull your ragged cloak around your shoulders and begin your walk, your second desperate pilgrimage to the barren forest. The path out of the village is a muddy, rutted track that skirts the edge of the Lord's great fallow fields. The air is cold and damp. The world is a study in gray and brown. And then you hear it. The sound of a horse's hooves, a slow, heavy, and confident clopping in the mud. You look up, and your heart, which was already a knot of grief and fear, now seizes with a new and more immediate kind of dread. It is the Lord's reeve. He is the most powerful and the most feared man in your daily world. He is not a nobleman. He is a man of common birth, like you, but a man who, through a combination of shrewdness, of skill, and of a profound and useful lack of sentiment, has risen to the position of the Lord's estate manager. He is the instrument of the Lord's will, the collector of the taxes, the enforcer of the labor duties. He is the gear that connects the small, miserable world of your village to the great, powerful, and indifferent machine of the manor. You see him approaching, and the contrast between his world and yours is a brutal physical insult. He is riding a strong, sturdy, and well-fed horse, its coat glossy, its breath pluming in the cold air. The reeve himself is a stout, thick-set man. His face is ruddy with good health. His belly, a testament to a life of full meals and strong ale, strains against the thick leather belt of his fine, worn, woolen cloak. He is an island of prosperous, well-fed authority in a great, starving sea of peasant misery. You immediately stop, step off the path, and bow your head, your eyes fixed on the mud at your feet. This is the required posture of a peasant before his master's authority. To look him in the eye would be an act of insolence. He reins in his horse, the animal letting out a cloud of warm, sweet-smelling breath. He looks down at you from his great height. His gaze is not cruel, not in an active way. It is something worse. It is the cold, dispassionate, and utterly uninterested gaze of a man inspecting a piece of his lord's livestock. "You are late to your foraging," the reeve says. His voice is a low, flat, and unemotional rumble. It is not a question. It is an accusation. My apologies, master." You stammer, your own voice a thin, reedy thing. "There was a sadness in the village. The son of William." The reeve cuts you off with an impatient wave of his gloved hand. He is not interested in the small, insignificant tragedies of you people. He is a man of business. He is interested only in the accounts. "The Lord's charity does not fill the storehouses," he says, his voice taking on a harder, colder edge. "The famine is a trial for us all, and every man must still do his duty. Have you forgotten that a portion of all that you find in the forest, a 10th part, is owed to the Lord's own larder?" The words are a quiet, brutal, and stunning blow. You stare at the mud, your mind reeling. You know this law, of course. It is the law of the forest. But you had foolishly, naively, hoped that in these desperate times, in a time of such profound and all-encompassing starvation, that the law might be suspended. But you look up for a fraction of a second, at the reeve's well-fed face, at his warm cloak, at his strong, healthy horse, and you understand the terrible truth. The famine, for him and for the Lord in his great stone castle, is not a shared crisis. It is a logistical problem. It is a regrettable and inconvenient downturn in the productivity of their great agricultural estate. Your suffering, your hunger, the death of your neighbor's child, it is all just a line item in their great, cold, and inhuman ledger. Your duty to provide them with their share does not end when you begin to starve. In fact, it becomes even more important, as their own stores must be protected. I have not forgotten, master," you whisper. "See that you do not," the reeve says. "The forester has my orders. He will be watching. The Lord requires his due." He gives a sharp tug on the reins, turning his horse. Now get to your work, and pray that God has been more generous with his roots and his acorns than he was with our grain. He kips his horse into a slow, steady trot, and continues on his way, on his morning rounds, on the endless and important business of extracting wealth from a land that is already destitute. He leaves you standing on the muddy path, your brief and desperate journey for food, having been interrupted by this stark and brutal reminder of your own absolute powerlessness. The heartbreaking image of your neighbor's dead child is now burned into your mind, and layered directly over it is the new and equally infuriating image of the well-fed reeve on his strong, healthy horse, a man who has just threatened you with punishment if you do not give him a tenth part of the nothing you are about to find. You have now seen the two unmovable poles of your existence. At one end is the silent, absolute, and anonymous misery of the peasantry, dying quietly in their huts. And at the other is the cold, well-fed, and utterly indifferent power of your masters. The profound and unbridgeable injustice of it all is a fire in your gut that is, in this moment, even more painful than the hunger itself. The reeve is gone, a well-fed specter of authority, leaving you standing alone on the cold, muddy path. His words hang in the air, a chilling and inescapable pronouncement. The Lord requires his due. The profound, soul-crushing injustice of it all is a hot, black bile in the back of your throat. You have just come from a house of death, a house where a child has starved, and you have been met not with a word of pity, but with a cold, hard demand for a share of the nothing you possess. The anger you feel is a brief, welcome fire in your cold and empty soul, but it is a useless fire. It cannot fill your stomach. It cannot feed your children. And to act upon it would be to invite a swift and certain death. And so, you do what you have been trained to do your entire life. You swallow your rage. You press it down, deep into the cold, dark, and silent place where you keep all the other injustices of your life. And you continue your walk to the forest. The rest of the day is a long, gray, and fruitless blur of searching. The forest, which was a barren and empty place yesterday, is even more so today. Every patch of earth that might hold a root has been turned over. Every branch that might hold a nut has been shaken. The land has been picked clean by the frantic, desperate hands of 100 other starving men, all engaged in the same silent and hopeless quest as you. Your harvest, after a full day of backbreaking, soul-destroying labor, is even more pathetic than the day before. A single woody parsnip root, as thin as your finger, a handful of the same bitter green acorns, and a few tough, frost-bitten mushrooms that you pray to a silent God are not poisonous. The journey home at dusk is a walk of pure, unadulterated shame. The brief, triumphant memory of the forbidden rabbit you brought home last night is a cruel and mocking ghost. Yesterday, you were a hero. Today, you are a failure. As you approach the village, you perform the most absurd and humiliating act of your life. You stop at the great flat stone at the edge of the woods that serves as the Lord's collection point. And with a heart that is full of a cold and bitter rage, you pay your tithe. You take a single precious acorn from your pouch, and you place it on the stone. It is a tribute of pure, insane futility. A single acorn offered from a starving man to a feasting Lord. It is the price of your continued, miserable existence. You arrive back at your hut. You do not need to speak. Your wife sees the almost empty pouch in your hand, and the look in your eyes, and she understands. The miracle of last night was a fleeting one. The grim, hungry reality has returned. She takes your meager findings without a word, and she begins the sad, familiar ritual of creating a meal from nothing. The acorns must be boiled, and then the water thrown out, and then boiled again, a long and tedious process to leach out the worst of the bitter, poisonous tannins. The woody root must be pounded with a stone, broken down into a stringy, fibrous pulp. The mushrooms are wiped clean of their dirt, and it is all thrown into the great black iron pot with water and a pinch of salt. The pot bubbles over the smoky fire, but the smell that fills the hut is not the rich, savory and life-giving smell of last night's rabbit stew. It is a thin, bitter, and earthy smell. It is the smell of poverty. It is the smell of desperation. When it is ready, she ladles the pottage into your wooden bowls. You look down at your evening meal. It is a thin, grayish, watery liquid, with a few sad, stringy pieces of the root floating in it, along with the soft, boiled flesh of the acorns. And then you eat. The taste is a profound and almost violent insult to the tongue. The broth is a thin, watery bitterness, a taste of boiled wood and of dirt. The acorns, despite the long boiling, are still incredibly mouth-puckeringly astringent, a flavor that coats your entire mouth in a dry, chalky film. And the roots are tough, fibrous, and almost impossible to chew, like eating a mouthful of stringy, tasteless rope. It is a disgusting meal. It is the food of animals, not of men. But it is hot. And it is, by the barest definition of the word, food. And so you eat it. You force it down, spoonful by spoonful, your body rebelling with every swallow. You watch your children. Their small faces are wrinkled in a shared look of distaste, but their hunger is a more powerful and more commanding force than their disgust. And so they too eat the bitter, woody sludge, their eyes full of a quiet indifference, weary sadness. You have never felt like more of a failure. To be unable to provide for your family is a profound and terrible shame. But to be forced to watch them eat this foul, bitter, and barely edible substance, and to know that this is the very best that your entire day of backbreaking labor could produce, that is a special and very personal kind of hell. The rich, savory, and delicious taste of the rabbit stew from last night is a memory that now feels like a physical pain, a reminder of a brief, beautiful moment of success in a long and unending sea of failure. The bowls are empty. Your stomachs are, in a physical sense, full, but it is a false and unsatisfying fullness. It is the heavy, dead weight of a meal that has offered no nourishment to the body and no comfort to the soul. The bitter taste of the acorns and the even more bitter taste of your own failure lingers in your mouth. You have survived another day, but the meal itself was a punishment, a grim and undeniable testament to your family's place at the very bottom of the world's great, cruel, and unforgiving food chain. The disgusting meal is over. The wooden bowls have been scraped clean, not out of enjoyment, but out of a desperate animal instinct to not waste a single possible speck of sustenance. You and your family now prepare for the long, cold, and hungry night ahead. The fire in the hearth is built up with a few more precious sticks and a cake of dried dung, a small, smoky heart in the center of your dark, cold hut. You lie down on your straw pallet. Your stomach is, in a physical sense, full. But it is a false and deeply unsatisfying fullness. The heavy, dead weight of the bitter, woody pottage. It is a meal that has brought no comfort, no strength, and no pleasure. It has only served to confirm the profound and absolute nature of your poverty. Your wife and your two older children are silent, their own disappointment a quiet, heavy blanket in the small room. You close your eyes, praying for the brief, if unrestful, oblivion of sleep. And then the quiet is broken. It is not a loud sound. It is a small, thin, and almost unbearably sad sound. It is the sound of your youngest son. a boy of only 4, as he begins to weep. It is not the loud, angry cry of a child who has been denied a toy. It is not the frightened cry of a boy who has woken from a nightmare. It is the weak, hopeless, and deeply wretched sound of a body that is being consumed by a hunger it cannot understand. The bitter, watery pottage has done nothing to satisfy the deep, primal, and honest hunger of his small, growing body. The gnawing emptiness has returned, and he does not know why. He turns on his small palate. His thin form a small, sad lump in the darkness. "Father," he whimpers, his voice a small, reedy thread of sound in the quiet hut. You open your eyes. You do not answer. There is nothing you can say. "Father," he says again, his voice a little stronger, a little more insistent. "My belly is still empty. I am hungry." The words are simple. They are honest. And they are the most terrible and most devastating words you have ever heard in your life. They are a spear, a sharp and perfectly aimed weapon that pierces directly into the center of your heart. You are a father. It is your most ancient and your most sacred duty to feed your children. It is the very bedrock of your identity as a man. And you are failing. You are failing in the most fundamental way a man can fail. Your wife rises from her own pallet and goes to the boy. She sits beside him, pulling him into her arms. She rocks him gently, murmuring soft, comforting words, the ancient, timeless language of a mother. "Hush, my love," she whispers. "Try to sleep. The hunger will pass with your dreams." But the boy cannot be soothed by words. His need is not for comfort. It is for food. His quiet whimpering begins to escalate, his small body tensing with the injustice of it all. It becomes a full-blown, desperate, and deeply accusing cry of pure animal hunger, a sound that fills the small, smoky hut with an almost unbearable accusation. "You have failed me. You have failed me." And in that moment, the memory of last night's meal, the memory of the rabbit stew, returns to you. But it is no longer a memory of triumph. It is a memory of profound and terrible guilt. You had brought them a feast, a single, glorious, and fleeting moment of warmth and fullness. You had allowed them to taste a different, better life. And now, the memory of that rich, savory meat makes this present, gnawing emptiness 100 times more cruel. You have not just failed to feed your son tonight. You have given him a beautiful, delicious memory that now serves only to sharpen the agony of his own empty stomach. You look at the boy who is now sobbing in your wife's arms, and you are filled with a rage so profound, so absolute, that it is a physical sickness. It is a rage against the heavens, against the Lord in his castle, against the reeve on his well-fed horse, against the very nature of a world that would allow a child to cry from hunger. But you are powerless. You are a peasant. Your rage is a useless, impotent thing. It cannot fill a single, empty bowl. You have nothing. There is no more food in the larder. The forest is a barren and empty place. There is nothing you can do. The boy's desperate cries finally begin to subside, his small body exhausted by the sheer effort of his own grief. His sobs soften into a series of long, shuddering, and heartbreaking hitches of his breath. And then, finally, he falls into a shallow, fitful, and deeply unrestful sleep. The hut is silent once more, but the silence is different now. It is no longer just the quiet of a poor and humble home. It is a silence that is haunted by the ghost of your child's hungry cry. That sound, that simple, desperate, and utterly innocent sound, will now be a permanent resident of your own mind. You lie awake in the cold, absolute darkness, long after your wife and your other children have found their own uneasy sleep. The apathy, The weary resignation you have felt for weeks has been burned away by the raw, primal fire of your son's tears. A new and dangerous resolve begins to form in your heart. You cannot simply endure this. You cannot simply watch your children waste away. You must do something. And as you lie there, the image of your neighbor, a man of your own station, flashes in your mind. A man who, unlike you, still has a single, scrawny goat tied to a post outside his hut. A new, dark, and deeply transgressive thought, a thought that would have been unthinkable to you just yesterday, begins to take root in the desperate, fertile ground of your soul. The line between an honest, starving man and a desperate, dangerous one is beginning to blur. The last, desperate cry of your hungry son has faded into a fitful, exhausted sleep. The small, smoky hut is silent once more, a silence that is now heavier and more profound than before. You lie on your straw pallet in the absolute darkness, but you are not sleeping. You are not even trying. The sound of your child's weeping has acted like a key, unlocking a new and terrifying chamber in your own soul. The weary, passive despair of the starving victim is gone, burned away by the hot, fierce, and deeply paternal fire of his tears. You are left with a single, burning, and inescapable thought. I must do something. And the silent, desperate darkness of the night, your mind, a tool you have used your entire life to calculate the seasons and the needs of your small farm, now turns its full, focused attention to a new and terrible kind of problem. The image of your neighbor, William, flashes in your mind, but you do not see his face, which was a hollowed-out mask of grief this morning. You see something else. You see the single, scrawny, and impossibly beautiful goat that is still tied to the post outside his hut. It is his family's last, most precious asset. It is the only thing that separates them from the absolute rock-bottom destitution that you now inhabit. The milk from the goat is likely the only thing that has kept his other, older children from the same fate as his youngest son. And the thought, the terrible, transgressive, and deeply sinful thought that had been a fleeting, shameful whisper before, now returns. And it is no longer a whisper. It is a loud, queer, and deeply logical voice. Steal it. And so, in the silent, private courtroom of your own mind, the great and final trial of your soul begins. There are two voices, and they are both your own. The first voice is the man you have been your entire life. It is the voice of the honest, God-fearing, and simple peasant. It is the voice of your father and of your father's father. It speaks of the ancient, unshakable rules that hold your entire world together. It is a sin, the voice says. To steal from your neighbor is a great and terrible sin in the eyes of an all-seeing God. It is a violation of his holy commandment. It is a stain upon your immortal soul that will see you burn for an eternity in the fires of hell. It is a crime, the voice continues. To be caught as a thief is to be shamed before the entire village. It is to be put in the stocks, your head and your hands locked in wood, for the children to throw rocks and filth at you. It is to be flogged in the public square, your back a bloody ruin. It is to be branded with a hot iron, a permanent physical mark of your own dishonor. And it is an act of profound betrayal, the voice concludes. This is William, the man whose own father helped your father build the roof of this very hut. His children play with your children. His grief is your grief. To steal his last hope is to become a wolf among your own flock. It is to admit that the community is dead, that we are no longer men, but simply starving, solitary animals. You listen to this voice. You know that it is right. It speaks the truth of the world you have always known, the truth of God, of the law, and of men. But then, the other voice speaks. It is a new voice, a voice that has been born of the famine, a voice that is colder, harder, and more brutally practical. It is the voice of a father who has just heard his own son cry from hunger. God, the new voice scoffs. Where was God when the rains came and rotted the grain in the fields? Where was God when your neighbor's son was wasting away? The priest in the village is fat. The Lord in his castle is fat. You have prayed, you have fasted. You have made your offerings, and God is silent. Your first and most sacred duty is not to a silent, distant God in heaven. It is to the small, crying, and very real child who sleeps just a few feet from you. The law, the voice says, and its tone is one of pure corrosive contempt. The law is the reeve on his well-fed horse, demanding a tenth of the acorns you find in the dirt. The law is the Lord, who owns the very deer that wander fat and plentiful through the forest, while your son eats boiled tree roots. The law is not a shield to protect you. It is a sword wielded by the rich to protect their own abundance from the desperation of the poor. The law has already declared war on you. And the community? The voice whispers, and its whisper is the most devastating argument of all. The community is a ghost. It is a warm and beautiful memory from the good years, from the years of the full harvest. Look around you. There is no community left. There is only a collection of desperate, silent, starving families, each one locked in its own private hell. William would do the same to you. He would steal your last loaf of bread if it would save his own children. To speak of community now is a sentimental and a dangerous lie. There is only one village, one tribe, one nation you must protect now. And it is the one that sleeps within these four walls. The two voices, the old and the new, the man you were and the man you are becoming, wage a terrible and silent war in your mind. The battle rages for hours as you lie there in the darkness. And in the end, it is not an argument that decides the victor. It is a sound. It is the memory of a sound. It is the memory of your son's thin, weak, and hungry cry. That single, simple, and heartbreaking sound is more powerful than the fear of hell, more powerful than the fear of the law, and more powerful than the ghost of community. The debate is over. The decision is made. Your mind, which was a moment ago a chaotic landscape of moral torment, now becomes a place of cold, clear, and practical planning. You begin to think not of the sin, but of the method. You would have to do it in the deepest part of the night, when the moon is down. You would need to muffle the goat's bleeding with a piece of cloth, a single, quick cut to the throat. You would not butcher it in the village. You would have to carry the carcass deep into the woods, to a place where no one would find the blood or the entrails. You lie in the darkness, and you are no longer a farmer. You are a plotter. You are a thief. You are a hunter of a new and more terrible kind. The first pale gray light of the dawn begins to seep through the cracks in the walls of your hut. You have not slept. You are spent the entire night in the crucible of this terrible choice, and you have emerged from it a different man. The honest, simple peasant is dead, or he is dying, and in his place is a cold, hard, and desperate creature who is now, finally, and truly, willing to do anything to keep his children alive. The decision has been made. In the cold, silent crucible of the sleepless night, you have burned away the man you used to be, the honest, God-fearing peasant, and have forged a new and harder creature. You are now a man who will steal from his starving neighbor to feed his own. You have weighed the sin against the certainty of your children's suffering, and the scales have tipped. The moral architecture of your old world has collapsed. The only law that remains is the survival of your family. You spend the morning in a state of cold, quiet, and purposeful resolve, simply waiting for the opportunity, for the moment of darkness and distraction that will allow you to act. But the day brings a new and unexpected event. A stranger arrives in the village. It is a rare sight. The roads are no longer safe, and your small, impoverished village is not a place that invites travelers. But this man is a wandering friar, a thin, gaunt figure in a dusty brown room, his only possession a walking staff and the rosary at his belt. He is on a long pilgrimage to a distant shrine, and he brings with him the only currency that has any value in these desperate times: news. The village, which has been a place of silent, isolated despair, stirs with a flicker of life. The few men and women who are still strong enough to walk emerge from their huts and gather around the stranger in the muddy clearing by the well. They are desperate for any word from the outside world, for a rumor of a good harvest in the south, for a story of a miracle, for any tiny, foolish scrap of hope. You join them, standing at the edge of the small crowd, your face an impassive mask. You are not listening for hope. You are listening for information. You are a man with a hard decision to make, and you are seeking data to confirm the grim logic of your new world. The friar's news is not of hope. It is a litany of horrors, a guided tour through a land that is descending into hell. He has walked from the north, and he tells of what he has seen. He speaks of villages that are not just hungry, but are completely empty, the huts filled only with the unburied skeletal remains of families who have simply laid down in their homes and died. He speaks of fields that have been abandoned for a full season, already being reclaimed by the wild forest. He lowers his voice, and the crowd leans in, a collection of gaunt and haunted faces. He tells them of the roads. The laws of God and of the king have vanished. The roads are now ruled by packs of desperate, starving men. Men who were once honest farmers like you, but who have now become wolves. He speaks of a merchant caravan traveling with armed guards that was overwhelmed and slaughtered, not for their gold, but for the sacks of grain they were carrying. He speaks of travelers being murdered in their sleep for the boots on their feet and the last stale crust of bread in no pouch. And then he tells the worst story of all. He tells it in a choked, horrified whisper. He speaks of a small, isolated village in the deep woods, a village that has been cut off from the world for the entire winter. When the snows finally melted, he says, a priest from a nearby town went to see to his flock, and he found them. They were alive, and they were well fed. The smoke from their chimneys was rich with the smell of roasting meat. But there were no animals left in the village. Not a single pig, not a single chicken, not a single dog. And the graves in the churchyard, he whispers, had been freshly and crudely dug up. A great, horrified gasp passes through your small, assembled crowd of neighbors. Cannibalism, the ultimate and most terrible of all sins. The final and absolute collapse of the human world. The friar finishes his terrible tales. He offers a prayer for your souls, accepts a single, precious turnip as payment, and he continues on his lonely, horrifying journey. He leaves behind a village that is now plunged into a new and even deeper state of terror and despair. But you are not terrified. You are not shocked. In the cold, hard, and logical calculus of your new mind, you are clarified. You listen to these stories of a world that is completely and utterly collapsing, of a social contract that has been burned to ashes, of men who have become beasts. And you understand, with a profound and chilling certainty, that your decision to steal your neighbor's goat is not a sin. It is a sane and rational act. The old rules, the old morality of the priests and the lords were a luxury. They were the rules for a world of full harvests and of ordered, predictable lives, a world that no longer exists. To cling to that old morality now, to let your own children starve to death out of a sentimental respect for your neighbor's property, is not an act of virtue. It is an act of suicide. It is an act of madness. You weigh the outcomes, a simple and brutal calculation. The suffering that will be caused by your act of theft is the pain of a single family, the loss of a single scrawny animal. The suffering that will be caused by your inaction is the certain, agonizing death of your own children, your own wife, yourself. The choice is not between good and evil. It is between a lesser evil and a greater one. And your duty, your only true and logical duty, is to choose the path that results in the greatest good for the greatest number of the people you are responsible for, your family. The horrifying rumors from the outside world have not filled you with fear. They have filled you with a grim and terrible certainty. They have burned away the last, lingering vestiges of your old, sentimental, and now dangerously obsolete conscience. You look at your own small hut. You look at the hungry, trusting faces of your children. And you look at the hut of your neighbor, William. And you know with an absolute and unwavering conviction that you are about to do the right thing. The friar, a walking vessel of horror and bad tidings, has departed, leaving your small village to steep in the new and terrible knowledge he has brought. The other villagers are paralyzed by a fresh wave of fear and despair, their own small suffering now contextualized within a world that is completely and utterly collapsing. But you are not like them. The travelers' tales of chaos and cannibalism have not filled you with fear. They have filled you with a strange, cold, and clarifying sense of purpose. The world has new rules now, and you are, perhaps for the first time, seeing them clearly. Night falls. You and your family huddle in your small hut. The bitter pottage from the evening meal has done little to quiet the ache in your stomachs. Your wife and children, their bodies weak from a hunger you can no longer deny, soon fall into a shallow, restless sleep. You, however, remain awake. Your mind is no longer a chaotic storm of anxiety and self-pity. It is a sharp, quiet, and calculating instrument, focused with a chilling clarity on a single, overriding objective: the acquisition of calories to ensure the survival of your family unit. The dying embers of the hearth cast a faint red glow on the dark, cramped space. The hut is quiet. The only sounds the soft, hungry breathing of your sleeping family and the low, mournful sigh of the wind outside. And then you hear it. It is a sound you have heard every night of your life, a sound that has always been a simple, ignorable part of the background of your existence. It is a faint, dry, rasping, and incredibly persistent gnawing sound coming from the thatched roof directly above your head. It is the sound of the rats. But tonight, you hear the sound differently. The man you were just a few days ago would have heard it with a simple, weary disgust. The rats were a pest, a sign of poverty, a creature of the filth. But that man is gone, burned away by the hard, clear flame of your children's hunger. You are a different creature now, a creature of pure, logical necessity. And you now hear the gnawing not as an annoyance, but as a direct and unacceptable threat to the well-being of your family. You lie on your back, staring up into the darkness where the sound originates, and your mind begins a cold and deliberate calculation. What are they eating? They are eating the very structure of your house, yes. But more than that, they are eating the last few forgotten grains of barley that have been trapped in the thatch since the roof was laid. Grains, calories, food that could be swept down, collected, and added to your own family's watery soup. The rats are not just a nuisance. They are thieves. They are a direct competitor for your family's scarce and dwindling resources, and they are a vector of disease. You have seen it yourself. A village that is overrun with rats is often, soon after, a village that is visited by a swift and deadly sickness. The Black Death is a recent and terrifying memory, a story of a plague that was carried, the priests say, on the backs of the rats. These creatures, living and breeding in the very roof above your sleeping children, are a profound and immediate health risk. Their continued existence directly increases the probability of suffering and death for your family. You look at your sleeping son, his face thin and pale. You listen to the fat, healthy, and persistent gnawing from above, and you see a gross and unacceptable inefficiency in your own household's survival system. The calories they are consuming, the life force they are stealing from the grain, is being wasted. Their well-being directly and negatively impacts the potential well-being of your children. And in the cold, clear, and unsentimental logic of this new world, a new and terrible thought begins to form. It is not a thought born of anger or disgust. It is a thought of pure, pragmatic, and utilitarian reason. The rats are not just a pest to be eliminated. In a world of absolute and unforgiving scarcity, a world where your neighbor's child has just starved to death, nothing that contains life-giving flesh can be considered a pest. The rats themselves are a resource. They are meat. The thought, which a week ago would have filled you with a wave of nauseating revulsion, now seems entirely, almost beautifully, logical. The problem and the solution are one and the same. They are consuming your resources. They are a threat to your family's health. By trapping them, by killing them, by eating them, you would simultaneously eliminate a direct threat to your family's health and convert a dangerous liability into a vital and life-saving asset. It is the most efficient, most logical, and most effective course of action available to you to maximize the well-being and the chances of survival of the people in your care. You lie in the darkness, listening to the gnawing sound in the thatch above you. But it is no longer the sound of your own misery and poverty. It is no longer the sound of a simple pest. It is the sound of an opportunity. It is the sound of an untapped source of protein. You close your eyes, but your mind is not resting. Your practical craftsman's mind is already at work, designing a simple but effective trap, a small snare made from a piece of sinew and a carved piece of wood. The night is no longer a period of suffering to be endured. It is now a time for quiet, ruthless, and logical planning. You have found your new hunt. You lie in the deep, cold darkness of the hut, your mind a silent and efficient machine. The emotional, chaotic turmoil of the past few days has been burned away, leaving behind a single, cold, and diamond-hard purpose: the survival of your family unit. Your thoughts are no longer of sin or of shame. They are of the practical mechanics of trap building, of the efficient acquisition of a new and necessary source of protein. You are a man who has made a logical and necessary calculation. The hunger of your children outweighs the life of your neighbor's goat. The threat of the rats outweighs the taboo of eating them. The world is a simple, brutal equation of calorie and cost, and you are finally beginning to understand the math. But the body is a treacherous and sentimental thing. It does not always obey the cold logic of the mind. After hours of this focused, purposeful wakefulness, your sheer, grinding physical exhaustion finally overwhelms your will. Your mind, against its own better judgment, surrenders, and you fall into a deep and profoundly inefficient sleep. And in that sleep, you dream. You are not in your cold, smoky hut. You are in the great hall of the Lord's castle. You have only ever glimpsed this place from a distance, but in your dream, you are its master. The room is a vast, cavernous, and beautiful heaven of warmth and light. A great, roaring fire, a magnificent beast of orange and yellow flame, rages in a hearth so large you could stand inside it. The long, heavy oaken tables are not bare, but are covered in fine white linen cloths, and they are groaning under the impossible, magnificent weight of a great feast. The dream is a masterpiece of sensory perfection. Your mind, which has been starved of all pleasure for so long, now constructs a world of pure, unrestrained, and absolute satisfaction. You can smell it. You can smell the rich, savory, and intoxicating aroma of a whole roasted pig, its skin a perfect, crisp, and bubbling sheet of crackling, an apple stuffed in its mouth. You can smell the fat dripping from a dozen roasted chickens turning on a spit. You can smell the warm, life-giving, and almost holy scent of fresh, white wheaten bread piled high in great wicker baskets. You can feel it. You can feel the wonderful, radiant warmth of the great fire on your face, a warmth so profound it seems to seep into your very bones, chasing away the deep, damp chill that has been your constant companion for a year. And then you taste it. You are sitting at the high table. You take a piece of the warm, soft white bread. It is not the coarse, gritty, and sour rye of your waking life. It is a cloud. You tear it with your hands and you dip it into a bowl of thick, rich pottage. A stew that is not the thin, watery gruel of your reality, but a thick, savory concoction, heavy with chunks of tender meat and sweet, soft carrots. You take a great, pewter tankard of strong, dark, and sweet ale. It is not the sour, thin, and watery swill of the village. It is a rich, foaming, and life-giving river that you pour down your parched throat. You tear a great chunk of the roasted pork with your own hands, the hot, delicious grease running down your chin. You eat with a wild, joyous, and unrestrained abandon. You eat not just for yourself, but for all the hungry days you have endured. You feel the magnificent, almost forgotten, and deeply blessed sensation of a full stomach. The gnawing, cramping, and aching emptiness that has been the central truth of your existence is gone. In its place is a feeling of profound, warm, and deeply satisfied contentment. You are happy. You are at peace. And then a sound intrudes. It is a thin, weak, and miserable sound. It is the sound of a child crying from hunger. And the magnificent, beautiful, and life-giving dream shatters. You awaken with a jolt. You are back. You are on your hard, cold straw pallet. You are in the deep, smoky darkness of your own hut. The beautiful, warm, and sunlit world of the feast is gone. The taste of the roasted pork and the sweet ale is a cruel, lying ghost on your tongue. And the only reality is the cold, the dark, and the deep, familiar, and now even more agonizingly painful gnawing of the hunger in your own stomach. The sound you heard was real. It is your own son whimpering in his sleep, his small body in the grip of the same terrible emptiness. You lie there, in the aftermath of your beautiful dream, and your new, cold, and logical mind begins to perform a final, terrible calculation. You weigh the experience. The dream provided a few brief and fleeting moments of an intense, but entirely false, sense of well-being. The waking. The harsh and brutal contrast between the magnificent fantasy and the miserable reality has produced a new and even deeper state of real, physical, and psychological suffering. The memory of the feast has not given you strength. It has only sharpened the pain of your own starvation. The dream, your mind concludes with a chilling certainty, was a net negative. It was a cruel, inefficient, and deeply unproductive trick of a sentimental and undisciplined mind. It has wasted your precious mental energy on a useless fantasy. It has deepened your suffering and has left you less prepared, less resolved, and less fit for the hard, practical, and unsentimental day of survival that lies ahead. Hope. You now understand even the involuntary, subconscious hope of a dream. is a dangerous and counterproductive luxury. It is a poison to the will. You sit up in the pre-dawn darkness. You are filled not with a nostalgic sadness for the beautiful vision you have lost, but with a cold, hard anger at your own mind for its sentimental, inefficient, and treacherous betrayal. The only thing that is real, the only thing that has any true utility is the cold, hard, and ruthless calculus of survival. You push the memory of the feast away. It is time to get up. It is time to check your traps. The dream of the feast is a cruel and exquisite poison. You awaken from it not with the lingering satisfaction of a full belly, but with the sharp, agonizing pang of its absence. You are back on your hard straw pallet in the cold, smoky darkness of your hut. The gnawing emptiness in your stomach is a physical, undeniable truth, a truth made 1,000 times more painful by the fresh, vivid, and utterly false memory of the taste of roasted meat and the feel of warm, soft bread. You sit up. The first, pale gray light of dawn is beginning to filter through the cracks in the walls. In the past, your first action would have been the slow, hopeless ritual of checking the empty grain bin, a pilgrimage to the shrine of your own failure. You do not do that today. Your new mind, the cold, clear, and brutally practical mind that was forged in the fires of the friar's terrible news, understands the inefficiency of such an act. Hope is a luxury. Despair is a waste of precious energy. The grain bin is empty. That is a known fact. To check it again would be a pointless and sentimental gesture that produces no food and only deepens the misery of your household. It is an act of negative utility. There is only one task that matters this morning. A task based not on hope, but on a logical and calculated plan. You must check your traps. You rise, your movements silent, so as not to wake your family. You slip out of the low doorway of the hut and into the cold, damp, pre-dawn air. The village is a place of sleeping ghosts. You are the only living soul stirring in the misty gloom. You do not go to the forest. That, too, is an inefficient use of energy, a long walk for a meager and uncertain reward. You have laid your new snares in the dark and forgotten corners of the village itself, in the places where your new and more reliable source of protein thrives. You creep to the great stinking refuse pile behind the huts. You had placed a small, simple snare there last night, a loop of sinew tied to a bent stick, baited with a single precious and half-rotten pea. The trap is empty. The bait is gone. A less disciplined mind might feel a surge of frustration. You feel only a moment of cold analysis. The placement was correct, but the mechanism was too crude. A lesson for the next attempt. You move on, a silent hunter, in the heart of your own sleeping village. You come to the crumbling stone wall at the edge of the churchyard. Here, you had placed a different kind of trap, a simple deadfall, a heavy, flat stone propped up by a stick, designed to fall and crush anything that disturbed the bait beneath it. You see it from a distance. The stone has fallen. Your heart, which you thought had been hardened into a cold and emotionless tool, gives a single, powerful wince and triumphant thump against your ribs. You approach the trap. There, crushed beneath the heavy stone, is your prize. A large, gray, and thankfully already dead rat. You lift the stone. You look down at the small, furry body. The man you were a week ago would have been filled with a wave of pure physical revulsion. He would have seen a creature of the filth, a symbol of poverty and of plague. You are not that man anymore. You are a new man, a man who sees the world as a simple, brutal equation. And so you do not see a pest. You see a solution. You look at the rat with a cold, detached, and purely practical eye. You see a unit of resource. You see its size, its weight. You calculate the amount of meat on its small bones. It is not much, but it is more than nothing. It is a net gain of calories for your family unit. It is a small but significant quantity of the protein they so desperately need to survive. You also see the mitigation of a threat. This single creature, if left alive, could have consumed precious grains from the thatch of your roof. It could have carried a sickness into your home. The act of trapping and killing it has not only produced a positive resource, it has eliminated a negative one. In the grim and brutal mathematics of your new world, the killing of this rat is an objectively good and moral act. It is a small but decisive step towards the maximization of your family's well-being. You take the small dead animal by its tail. You quickly and with a craftsman's efficiency carry it to a secluded spot by the stream, away from the waking eyes of the village. You perform the grim but necessary task of skinning and cleaning it with your own belt knife. It is a disgusting job, but you feel no disgust. You feel only a cold, quiet, and deeply practical sense of purpose. As you work, the memory of last night's beautiful and torturous dream returns. The memory of the magnificent, impossible feast. You contrast that glorious imaginary vision with the small, pathetic, and very real scrap of bloody meat you now hold in your hand. The dream offered an infinite but entirely false pleasure, a pleasure that resulted only in a deeper and more painful suffering upon waking. This small, ugly act, this act of skinning a rat by a cold stream at dawn, will provide a small but real amount of nourishment. It will produce a tangible, positive outcome. You have learned a new and terrible lesson. In this world, true goodness is not found in beautiful dreams or in hopeful prayers. It is found in the small, ugly, and brutally practical acts that allow you to survive. You return to your hut as your family is beginning to wake. You have not found a miracle. You have not had a bountiful harvest, but you are carrying a small skinned animal. It is a meager and almost shameful prize, but it is real. You have traded the false hope of the past for the grim, logical calculus of the present. And for the first time in a long time, you are bringing home real food, a product not of luck or of God's mercy, but of your own cold and deliberate will. The sun rises, a pale, anemic disk in the gray and unforgiving sky. Your long, sleepless night of moral and strategic calculation is over. You are no longer a man torn by doubt. You are a man with a plan, a cold, clear, and pragmatic path forward. You rise from your pallet, and your first act is not to check the empty grain bin, a pointless ritual of hope and despair. Your first act is to check your traps. You return to your hut as your family is waking. You have not found a miracle. You have not stumbled upon a hidden bounty, but you are not empty-handed. In your hand, you carry the small, skinned, and undeniably real body of a large rat. It is a grim, and by the standards of your old life, a disgusting prize. But it is protein, it is fat, it is calories, it is life. Your wife looks at the offering in your hand. There is no joy in her eyes. There is no disgust. There is only a quiet, weary, and pragmatic acceptance. This is the world now. This is what food looks like. She takes the small carcass without a word and begins to prepare the morning's meal. The small amount of meat is chopped and added to the pot with the bitter, woody roots from yesterday and a handful of the last withered turnips. The pot bubbles over the fire, and it produces a thin, grayish stew. But today, it has a new smell. Beneath the familiar, earthy scent of the roots, there is the faint, rich, and almost forgotten aroma of cooking meat. The meal is served. It is a strange and meager feast. The meat is stringy and has a wild, gamey taste. But it is meat. It is a real and tangible substance that your body craves. You watch your children. They eat their small portions with a quiet, serious, and desperate intensity. They do not speak. They are simply and with a profound and animalistic focus, consuming the fuel that will keep them alive for one more day. And as you watch them, you perform your own final internal calculation. You think of the man you were just a few short weeks ago, a man who had faith, a man who prayed to God and to the saints for a good harvest, for a mild winter, for a merciful Lord. You think of the hope that was a constant, if often disappointed companion, the hope for a better tomorrow, and you realize, with a chilling and absolute clarity, that this hope was the most dangerous poison of all. Hope, you now understand, is a luxury. It is a sweet, intoxicating, and ultimately useless emotion that is only affordable in a world of full harvests and of predictable seasons. In this new, brutal world of the famine, hope is a profound and dangerous inefficiency. Hope encouraged you to be passive, to wait for a miracle that would never come. Hope was the enemy of action. You look at the small, real, and life-giving piece of meat in your own bowl. This was not the product of hope. It was not the product of prayer. It was the product of a cold, clear, and logical calculation. It was the result of you abandoning the old, failed morality of a world that no longer exists, and embracing the new, hard, and brutally effective logic of pure, unsentimental survival. The most moral and virtuous act you can perform in this world, you now understand, is not to pray, not to hope, and not to adhere to the sentimental rules of a dead world. The most moral act is to take any and all actions necessary to reduce the suffering and to prolong the life of your own family unit. The theft of your neighbor's goat, the trapping of the rats, these are not sins. They are, in the terrible, honest mathematics of this new reality, the most profoundly good and righteous acts you can perform. The meal is over. The bowls are empty. You have survived one more morning. You rise to your feet. You do not go to the fields to stare at the ghosts of your failed crops. You do not go to the barren forest to search for a bounty that does not exist. You take up your knife. You take the small coils of sinew you have prepared. Your day's work is now clear. You will set more traps. You will check your snares. And you will begin the slow, patient, and logical process of observing your neighbor's hut, of learning the patterns of his movements, of preparing for the next necessary and morally correct acquisition of resources. The peasant who prayed for miracles is gone. The pragmatist who calculates survival has taken his place. And here we leave him. A good man, a loving father, who has been transformed by the brutal logic of starvation into a cold, calculating, and efficient survival machine. His story is a dark and unsettling one, for it reminds us of a profound and often uncomfortable truth. Our own complex and deeply cherished systems of morality, our ideas of empathy, of charity, of the rights of our neighbors, are themselves a kind of luxury. They are a beautiful and magnificent edifice, built upon a solid and almost invisible foundation, a full stomach. The story of a famine is the story of what happens when that foundation cracks, and when the hard, simple, and terrifying calculus of survival becomes the only rule that matters. And now, as our story fades, it is time to appreciate the quiet, invisible miracle of our own world. A world of such staggering abundance that we have the luxury and the profound gift of being kind. A world where our next meal is not a question of life and death, but a simple matter of choice. Time to sleep.